Alright everyone, I know I called you all in here on your days off, but we are still missing the key element here that really showcases the bonds between the pilots operating the Franxx. And with our deadline growing ever so closer, we really need to come up with it tonight. Any ideas?
Well, what if we had both of the operators use drill-like keys and then...
That's Gurren Lagann.
Oh, we could have one person controlling the arms and the other person controlling the legs.
Still Gurren Lagann.
Face it, guys. We're not magically going to pull an idea out of our asses.
That's it! They ride together with butt controls!
When you take the time to look back at all the life lessons you experienced as a teenager, arguably the most valuable one that stuck with you throughout your entire life is the concept of forming bonds with others can let your own capabilities soar to much greater heights and make your dreams that much closer to reach when you have the support of those close to you. And in the anime Darling in the Franxx, this lesson was piloted straight into the heart of the community with its powerful message of defending humanity with the power of bonds. This sci-fi based romance series was made possible thanks to linking together the producing company Cloverworks with the animation team from Studio Trigger, and this dream team set out to deliver on the hype they have been building up since its reveal, and in January of 2018, it immediately captured the hearts of many during its premiere episode. The plot is focused around a post-apocalyptic futuristic type of setting where Earth's surface became uninhabitable thanks to the threat of a mysterious species known as the Klaxosaurs. In order to battle this threat, the organization known as APE took humanity to the skies on floating colonies and started developing combat-based mechs titled Franxx as a countermeasure and placed their faith in pilots codenamed parasites, which are the children of the world capable of operating these machines, making them the only ones capable of fending off this threat of extinction for all of mankind. While this is definitely a lot to take in right away, the story of this series is focused on the members of the 13th Squad in particular and centered around our main protagonist Hiro, a bright young pilot in training who couldn't form a proper partnership to operate a Franxx, but after a fated encounter with a mysterious red-horned beauty known as 02, they form a special partnership that forever intertwines their destinies together when they pilot the special Franxx Strelitzia and give mankind a fighting chance to take back their home. Something that is entirely special to Squad 13 besides their lucky number is that they are the only squad to go by actual names instead of their code numbers, and also have Franxx specifically designed for them to operate, which makes sense since they are all characters with their own unique individualities thanks to the quirks and behaviors they present when it comes to working together as a team and living their everyday life with each other. Ichigo, the squad leader and childhood friend of Hiro, she carries the responsibility of the team on her shoulders with her collected but still very caring attitude and will actively go out of her way to defend her teammates, especially when it comes to Hiro, whom she's grown feelings for over the years. Goro, partner to Ichigo and a childhood friend to both her and Hiro, he is the upbeat and rational thinker of the group, often keeping things in line with his positive outlook when things start to derail off course. Together, they pilot the Delphinium, the twin sword-wielding Franxx. Zarome, often referred to as the most obnoxious member of the team, his loud personality helps further showcase his strong determination to one day become an adult in this world and work hard to fight alongside his teammates. Miku, the spunky, outspoken member of the team who is often motivated to prove herself when it comes to combat, even if it means she is blunt about her thoughts being partnered with Zarome, whom she butts heads with a lot. Besides that, she still holds a compassionate side for him and everyone else on the team. Together, they pilot the Argentea, the swift claw-striking Franxx. Futoshi, the polite and cheerful spirit of the group who has a strong love for food, but his desire to protect others is even higher as he always does his best to support the team. Kokoro, the sweet and gentle soul of the team whose love for flowers matches her undying kindness she has towards her squad, even if it means sometimes she will just go with the flow rather than speak her mind. Together, they pilot the Genista, the heavy-duty long-range attacking Franxx. Mitsuru, the prideful and oftentimes cynical teammate of the squad who feels everyone is below him when they're outside of combat and doesn't really like the idea of leaning on others for support. Ikino, the highly intelligent and logical thinker for the squad. Her serious nature has her come off as detached from the team, but it's actually the opposite as she's very considerate when it comes to caring about those around her. Together, together they pilot the Chlorophytum, the rapid-firing support Franxx. When it comes down to the Franxx themselves, they appear to be your stereotypical kind of mechs designed for pilots to engage in combat against whatever enemy they may come across, but while that base idea remains true here, the whole concept and how they operate couldn't be any more different. They are designed in a way that requires specific pairs consisting of a stamen, which is the male pilot, and a pistol, which is the female pilot, and having both users be able to synchronize their minds in order to act as a single unit and essentially becoming the Franxx they are operating. What I really like about this concept is that it gives way more characterization to the mechs themselves when you can see actual emotion constantly being implemented in the faces of the Franxx compared to a simple blank expression from some of the older mech-based series, and makes the combat against the Klaxosaurus much more engaging when you see the Strelitzia flash a grin of triumph or when the Delphinium shows actual tears being shed to match the user inside. Also, I really love how the names and weapons of each Franxx are scientific nods to real-world flowers, adding a very nice stylistic touch of detail. The lead scientist, Dr. Franxx, who created these mechs to be used by humanity, made sure every mech in Squad 13 is so distinct from one another besides their design, and so they can be specialized for many different situations that can happen during combat, which leads into strategically creative tactics having to be implemented on the battlefield with every mission they partake in. And because of the many different classes of Klaxosaurs appearing with their own unique properties, every battle fought is that much more unique and special compared to the last, which is refreshing for this kind of story. I must say, in all my years of watching anime, I never knew the advancement we needed in mech anime would be bug controls, but God bless you, Papa Trigger, for thinking way ahead of our time. While one can argue that these sci-fi centered action segments is what really drew the fans of the series into watching it, I would say that is only a small fraction of what really kept people invested into this series due to it being heavily influenced by the much stronger elements at play during the story, and one of those elements is the bonds formed by every character on the squad. Even though they're on standby and under constant supervision from their caretakers Hachi and Nana, these teenagers are free to go about their daily lives in a communal living kind of environment, and that gives every character a chance to explore their own individuality while also strengthening their bonds with each other, especially when it comes to their partners. In order to be able to pilot a Franxx to begin with, you have to be compatible with the other person you'd be piloting with on a cellular level, but more importantly on an emotional level. You can only get that kind of strong connection with someone through bonding experiences that further develops your relationship, and by having a cast of teens going about a situation like this one brings in a sense of awkwardness that would only happen with characters still learning things about the world, which can be pretty damn relatable to every viewer who went through similar things growing up, minus the apocalypse setting. Everyone on Squad 13 gets development like this to some degree, which makes sense not only because they are the only parasites with names in a squad thanks to Hero giving them out when they all were young, but because the series is meant to show how the strength of bonds can overcome the many hardships of life, whether it be in fiction or in real life, and every character goes through moments where that becomes really important to them and builds great character moments even with a big cast like this one and makes them beloved by all. Mitsuru is the best example of this, as he truly believed bonds were nothing more than dead weight and didn't want to rely on anyone outside of the Franxx, but after being swapped over to be teamed up with Kokoro, her sweet and understanding nature plants a seed of development that will later blossom into one of the best transformations of the series and opened up more emotional elements to the rest of the cast as well, but more on that later. See what I did there though? Plants a seed because she gardens? I'm clever, damn it. Now for what I consider the strongest and most defining element for this series when it comes to its post-apocalyptic story, and is also one of the strongest bonds anyone can make with another person, falls into the very passionate category known as romance. With the title of the anime alone, you could have probably guessed that romance would be a strong factor for our main characters, especially when it comes down to the case of Hero and 02 when the first time Darling gets set on screen. But besides the initial dynamic of two people falling head over heels for one another, this series really explored every joyful and painful aspect of love for its cast of characters. As I stated earlier, every squad member is young and still learning about how feelings work or even what exactly they are, which gives each character moments where they learn to cope with their own feelings, such as good boy Goro having to shoulder his love for Ichigo even though she loves Hero, or when the partner swap happened and Futoshi is crushed when Kokoro decided to ride with Mitsuru instead. These type of feelings aren't always going to be pretty or filled with roses like advertisements like to promote. It can be very much filled with pain and confusement, which is a big learning experience that I bet most viewers can relate to on some level from when they were young as well. But as the characters do learn over time, just because it can come with painful moments like that doesn't mean feeling love is bad, and this anime has some great examples examples of how finding happiness and trust with another person can be a wonderful thing, and brings in powerful character development for our protagonist during its 24 episode run. Before we jump straight into some of the best examples of romance in this anime, I'm gonna get a little serious here, as I'd like to address one issue that I feel gets thrown around a lot in the anime community when it comes to any sort of love triangle situation, especially with this series in particular, and that issue is the best girl debate between 02 and Ichigo. I first started this series way after the final episode had originally aired, and without any prior knowledge of the characters other than what they looked like, but that didn't prevent me from hearing about how people were getting into large-scale debates over who was a better love interest for Hiro between these two characters. Now, I can understand the logic of wanting your favorite characters to end up together over another potential pairing, but from what I heard, this debate in particular became saturated with so much hate towards Ichigo fans because of a few choices she made, which honestly weren't super great moments for the character, but that doesn't mean she or her fans deserve to be crucified in the community. When you look at the situation from Ichigo's perspective, she's juggling being a good team leader while also trying her very best to protect someone she cares about deeply from potentially going down a path of self-destruction in the form of 02, who has been known to use and discard her past partners. It's way more than understandable from that context alone for her character to try to keep Hiro away from her. Obviously, without going too much into spoiler territory just yet, this issue does get addressed and eventually everyone does have more character development spawn from it, but it's frustrating to me that it turned into such a big problem outside of the show. Ichigo has many great moments throughout where she voices her concerns while at the same time still being a great leader that would put herself in harm's way when it comes down to the people she cares about, and those are the kind of qualities you would want from a strong character. Both 02 and Ichigo are adorably designed characters who have positives and negatives to them just like any other kind of character, but just because you like one over the other doesn't mean someone else is wrong for liking a character that you don't. I could probably make an entire video just talking about this one issue in a lot of fandoms, but I wanted to mention it here especially because of the stigma Darling fans got over this problem. If the characters can learn to respect each other, then shouldn't we all be able to as well? Moving right along from that, let's talk about the relationship that became the flagship that drove this series into the spotlight and defined this series as the true romantic sci-fi that it is in the loving form of Hiro and 02. From the moment Hiro laid eyes on 02, he was captivated by her beauty, while at the same time she was surprised on how he wasn't afraid of how she looked and immediately sparked an interest in him. These two characters instantly felt a kinship with one another as both of them harbored the feeling of loneliness, and when it came time to act in order to fend off a Klaxosar, they both were able to synchronize their minds completely in order to utilize the true potential of Strelitzia in combat, something that would have been impossible for either of them to do alone. That one event sparked a unique kind of dependency between them that seemed to be out of necessity at first, but with the playful side of 02's teasing and Hiro's desire to pilot with her despite the risky rumors, started to develop into genuine affection for one another, and is especially evident with how strong of a devotion Hiro shows when it comes to fighting alongside her. Seriously, if this doesn't show you care quite a bit, what would? Now there is way more to the romance between these two that really screams how adorable they are together, besides forever changing how we view the word darling, but that's where we start to approach on some story specifics that warrant the good old spoiler warning here, and the timestamp you can dash your way through in order to make sure your connection to the series remains spoiler free. Right from the get-go, you can tell that 02 isn't like all the other parasite children who were created just for the sheer purpose of fighting off Klaxosaurs, if those red horns weren't an obvious giveaway. In fact, she's regarded as the key to saving civilization due to the Klaxosaur DNA in her system that grants her the ability to pilot the strongest Franxx there is, but at the cost of no one being able to fight alongside her, that is until she came in contact with Hiro. From what seemed like a random coincidence that bonded them forever actually turned out to be way more precious than that, as they both once knew each other from their childhood years. Hiro was immediately entranced with her form when he first saw her, but after discovering that she was being experimented on, decided to break her out and try to flee from the adults causing her pain. While 02 wasn't able to fully comprehend what Hiro was saying to her, she felt like she could trust him due to the imagery from a pretty book she received that depicted a story of love between the beast and the prince, and even though the time they spent together was short, a vow was made between the two that Hiro would be her darling, igniting 02's desire to become human. After recovering their lost memories and understanding what they meant, the relationship between the two truly began to blossom from the moment they shouted to the world that they loved each other regardless of how different they are, which is beautifully symbolic of the story 02 cherished in her heart. And I say that quite literally. Even though this revelation was kinda easy to predict, that doesn't make it any less sweet in my opinion, and really helped flesh out these two when it came to developing their bond outside the need to fight together. 02 desperately wanted to be human for her darling when she was young and was forever in turmoil trying to reach this goal, but after being accepted once again for who she is by Hiro, begins to show more compassion for human beings like the rest of the squad and truly starts to feel at home, which was a really nice change for her character moving forward. The final piece of how truly one of a kind their relationship is also very much tied to the last few episodes of the series, which from what I have seen is a hot button issue among the community. Oh, be quiet, I haven't even spoken what I thought yet. A series with a post-apocalyptic setting like this one raises a lot of questions, such as why are the adults seemingly out of the picture most of the time and also need to be protected by the children, or what is the deal with these mysterious figures referred to by the children as Papa? Well, the most pinnacle revelation that the anime was building up to not only answers all these questions and more, but also completely changed the perspective of what was truly good and evil in this world. Essentially, the Klaxosaurs were once the thriving lifeforms that inhabited Earth, but once an alien race called Virum demanded that all of them abandon their lives and merge into the Virum's collective hive mind, a war for survival broke out that escalated to the point where the Klaxosaurs fled underground to prepare for more battles ahead, allowing humanity to slowly take their place on the planet years later. But after being led astray by Virum, humanity began to evolve rapidly thanks to harvesting magma energy from the planet, and once again sparked the conflict between the two races, with the Klaxosaur princess taking the fight to the surface once more. Due to humanity abandoning almost all feelings and the ability to procreate over the years in exchange for their immortality, children that retained those past qualities and capable of piloting the Franxx were developed and labeled parasites, setting in motion the events of the series to begin with. While that is a lot to take in and my shortened down explanation of it probably could have been better, pretty much the big reveal of the series was, hey, we were being used and fighting the good guys the whole time, which is not a wholly unique trope, especially when you add in the space invasion element, but that doesn't mean it's bad here. In fact, I actually thought it was built up pretty well when you've been following along with all the context clues and world building moments like the squad's time in the ruins of the abandoned town, or how Zerome discovered how the adults actually lived when getting to converse with one. The final climactic showdown between humanity and Virum combines all the elements that we have come to know and love from this anime into one big emotionally charged package of the last few episodes that had me on the edge of my seat the entire time. 02 has taken the fight to Virum after learning of her true connection to the Klaxosaurs and stands strong with her desire to defend humanity, including her beloved, even if it means she never gets to see him again, but true love always finds a way as Hiro, with the support of his friends, makes his way back to her, and they truly become one and the same as together they make one final stand against these heartless invaders. While this battle's final march is taking place, we also got to see humanity finally start to grow past its previous dystopian ways that Virum had rooted to the ground, and actually get to see the emotional payoffs for all the characters we've been following this whole time, which was very rewarding. Aw, my boy Goro! I'm so happy about him and Ichigo. It's a heartwarming idea that no matter how hard humanity can fall, there's always a chance we can rebuild as long as we have bonds worth fighting for, and that's in the minds of Hiro and 02 as their love for each other and everyone back on Earth fuels their final strike on Virum and finally bringing the conflict to an end. While it is sad they never got to see their friends one final time, they created the possibility for the future of mankind to succeed, and honestly, while I've grown to love all of the characters, this ending was much more fitting for the two of them. These were two beings that were always meant to fall in love with each other, and by becoming one with another, they were able to overcome so much together, and knowing that even in the next life they will still find a way back to each other, I think is a very sweet and touching ending that rewarded the fans who stuck alongside for the ride that Darling and the Franxx had to offer, so to me, this was a great ending. However, there is one relationship in this anime I didn't bring up much earlier because I wanted to give it a special mention here for how amazing it turned out to be, and equal to, if not the best example of romance and character building in this series, and that is the relationship between Kokoro and Mitsuru. Both of these characters had some obvious weaknesses from the start of the series, such as Mitsuru's arrogance when it came to relying on others for support, and with how Kokoro's timid nature often caused her to keep her opinions to herself, but the partner swap experiment changed everything. Kokoro's caring nature guided her to work up the nerve to try and reach out to Mitsuru in order to better understand him and change his way of thinking, which at first came off as annoying to him, but eventually began to understand her words when seeing how far she was willing to go in order for him to keep moving forward. This sparked a big change in both characters' personalities as their strengths complemented each other's weaknesses and were able to teach each other valuable life lessons such as forgiveness when it came to themselves and the people around them, eventually leading both of the characters to actively seek out the company of one another due to the growing chemistry between them. However, what really added fuel to the fire was Kokoro learning about the concept of love and creating a family from an old book she found in the ruined town, and started to understand her desires of wanting more in life than what was being forced upon her, and seeing that turmoil she was carrying pushed Mitsuru to want to do everything in his power to protect that dream of hers and have her understand his feelings of love for her, which brought on the most beautiful and heart-wrenching episode where they decide to celebrate their love by getting married and truly signify how much they have grown and how devoted they are to building a future future together. However, what made me so goddamn upset besides how touching this moment was when the special forces came and dragged them away from their wedding to erase their memories of ever feeling anything for one another, which was so heartbreaking that I needed a few minutes to really recover from it. Man, fuck the Nine, seriously. But in the end, their true love was meant to be. As the discovery of being pregnant may have shook Kokoro to the core, Mitsuru still held feelings to stay with her despite not remembering anything previously, and truly shows how much of a blessing of a couple they are, as nothing could ever break the vow their souls made with each other. They became the first example of creating a family that would be the inspiration to the future of mankind, and that is the sort of character development you would normally only get from the central protagonist, but I would argue these two are the purest form of romance that you could want from a series like this one. To give you an idea, I would defend these two with my life. That's how touching I found their story. Animation-wise, this series came out beautifully, as Studio Trigger has always been known for delivering top-notch quality in the animation department with its bright visuals popping on screen, and this series was no exception. This series used very stylized colors when it came to painting the imagery used for the Franxx powering up, and had a very polished feel during the combat segments when it came down to both the movement and the fluid delivery of powerful attacks. Every Franxx has a distinct design from one another that helps them stand out, while still emulating every personality quirk you quickly learn about the characters piloting them, and seeing some of the set pieces just left me in awe when seeing this cast of characters interact in the world that the series set up. I'm not much of a honey person, but damn did Trigger make me want to go out and buy some for how good it looked here. All the squad members felt unique and creative with their personalities, to the point that they didn't feel super tropish to me because of how well animated and defined their development was. Given the context of the male and female partnerships when it came to piloting the Franxx, I understand why they gave it more of the fan servicey kind of treatment, even when it was a bit much at times, but for a coming of age story about youth learning about life in general, it makes sense why they had this element come into play from a narrative perspective, and a beach-centered episode didn't feel quite out of place because of the character building and actual plot progression that happened. Now, this series only had 2 openings during its run, and they decided to use the same song for both, but I have to say that was the correct choice because Kiss of Death is an absolute masterpiece. Both opening styles were made around this hauntingly beautiful song that you can tell a lot of care went into them, from the powerful color schemes when showing the pain of its main characters in both the red and blue spectrums, but also showing the unified power of them all as a team working together, and how well the visuals played off the lyrics when going in for the kiss, or just having 02 say darling. Mika Nakashima absolutely killed it when singing this banger of an opening theme. The amount of symbolism here for the themes of romance and bonds is so much that if you took the time to analyze every single detail, it would take quite a while, but that just adds to the strength of both, as these kinds of openings are the ones that will stick with you long after you finish the series. The first version of it even won Best Opening of 2018 at the Crunchyroll Awards, so what does that tell you? Another interesting choice they went with was having multiple different kinds of ending themes play out, but still captured the essence of our main characters trying to live their lives through the happy times or even experiencing the sadder moments, but still signifies the bonds formed keeping them all together. The soundtrack was enchanting for how well it really captured the feelings expressed in every scene, and truly made each moment feel extra memorable because of how great it sounded. I know it sounds like I'm just wanting to talk about only the positives when it came to the music department, but that is because I really believed every piece fit the scene it accompanied and really knew how to build excitement or get you to feel alongside the characters on screen. My experience with this anime was with the subbed version, and I truly felt the voice cast did a superb job when it came to portraying every character. Because this series had such a wide variety of different kinds of characters, there were many great opportunities to really show how these different quirky behaviors can bounce off one another, from Miku's loudness being expressed in an outgoing kind of voice, or how Ikeno's more somber seriousness was voiced in a way that expressed confidence, and those are just small examples of how every voice actor nailed their part really well. Overall, this anime was a series that I had little to no knowledge of going into, besides from what people kept trying to say about it, like if they thought it was a good show or a bad show, but I'm the kind of person who always wants to form my own opinions on most things, so I went in with a clear mind and was ready to have my very own experience watching it, and honestly, that was the best way to do it because now I very much love this series. Everything about this series came off as charming and mesmerizing to experience. Even with it playing off some of the more common tropes we've already come to know, it still took them and made them feel unique in a powerful thematic story about how bonds are very important to everyday life, and that is a lesson human beings learned early on that keeps society thriving with your friends or your very own darlings. I give Darling in the Franxx 9 sweets out of 10, and I highly recommend you board this roller coaster of emotions in order to experience some of the sweetest, heart-wrenching moments to come out of anime in 2018, and see for yourself if the lessons in this series are something you are willing to ponder once again. Also, can we get an English release of the manga, please? I'm very curious on how it's gonna turn out. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching this extra long review all the way to the end. If you haven't noticed, the last couple reviews I made recently were on series that I meant to watch as they aired, but kinda lost track of as time went on. But here I am having a great time experiencing them now, especially if I'm discovering new favorites like Darling, which honestly I think is my favorite new series to come out of 2018, but like I said, I still have way more series I need to get around to watching at some point. I'm hoping I was able to properly show how much Darling and the Franxx impacted me as a viewer, and also showed why I was so excited to make this review, because I think it's a great series to experience and you shouldn't let someone else's negative opinion stop you from enjoying something you like. It would be a great help to me if you could fully synchronize with that like button to show that you enjoyed the video, and if you're wanting to stay in the loop when it comes to any future series I may review, painting on that subscribe button would be the best way to make sure you don't miss out on my next video. Now, if you'll excuse me, I probably should let my staff know they can go home.